I would like to say that when I began my peace building journey in 2012, and this was as a result of losing someone who was very dear to me. I lost a brother who was in prison for 8 years, and upon his release, only 6 months later, he was shot dead. And in Nairobi, this thing was like normalized, the extrajudicial killings and young people participating in criminal activities. So there were a lot of tensions and mistrust between the youth and security actors. And I felt this was a wake-up call for me as a woman, a young woman in this case. How do I unpack my pain in such a way that I'm not continuing the issues of young people participating in criminal activities and security actors picking up the execution way of eliminating crime in our society? And mostly I used to engage youth on community conversations, having single identity dialogues with the youth, and also notifying the local administration on this ongoing dialogues. And at some point, we had to bring them together. We were doing this because I was understanding from my point of listening to how young people were reasoning on when it comes to issues of peace and security. They were just pointing fingers and blaming the security actors. Most of them were not seeing some of the root causes that lead to the actions of the security actors. On the other hand, also blame games were playing out. So in my first attempt to bring them together, I really faced a lot of challenges, because when youth came and I had prepared them for this dialogue and security actors also agreed to come on board, they ended up exchanging words and blaming them. And at this point, I really felt disappointed, because I thought this was an opportunity for them to air their issues so that the security actors can listen and act upon them. On the other hand, police officers also felt like I just brought them there so that these young people could intimidate them and talk to them rudely. So I had to go back to the drawing board and find out, how can we deal with this issue in such a way that it is solution oriented in some way. So it is then that I noticed that it is important to deal with people who are hurting. Make sure you deal with their pains before you introduce them to the other parties whom you want them to have a conversation with. That is when I introduced the issue of trauma healing awareness and resilience, so that they are able to understand that even having a conversation with them perceived police officers whom they brand all sorts of names, they are killers, they are brutal. Let them heal and understand that having a conversation with a police officer is also part of their healing journey. And this really helped me. And you realize that when they understand we want solution to our problems, they're able to move outside the box and reason, how can we achieve this? This was only made possible because I know the psychological effects, the trauma that was caused on most of them, how many young women were widowed at a very tender age, 16, 17, 18. You're just there. You don't know what to do with your life. They are confused. So this is the key point that I really took it up, and it really worked out. And in 2018, I was privileged enough to lead a peaceful disarmament process. This was a young man who was being targeted by police to be killed, not even to be arrested. He was in their target list. But when he approached me and said, Rose, you know what? I want to give this firearm back to the government. I felt like I cannot do this thing alone. I have to include security actors in such a way that I'm not going to expose this young man. He's not going to be killed, because we have had cases when other people surrendered and they just disappeared out of nowhere. So I had to work with a very local government official, and I told him, you know what I've been doing in this community with young people. Now I want to give back an illegal firearm to the government. I need you to help me do this in such a way that we're not putting this young man's life in danger. And we were able to lead this process, and it was very successful. And the community now gains trust, and they're able to understand that it is okay to surrender back illegal firearms to the government. And sometimes I just noticed that the way of doing it really matters a lot. You cannot do peace and security in isolation. You must work with especially security actors. And I reason with the police from an angle of, before they are police officers, they are human beings. Being able to connect the human being part of it, so that I'm not seeing them as killers, I'm not seeing them as brutal, I'm seeing them as human beings, and I connect with their day-to-day life.